Welcome everyone to this week's lesson. Last week we were in the depths of developing a content part, and we're going to do that. We're going to continue enhancing our content part a little, and the first thing is that we're going to add some features to it. We're going to extend it in some ways that we haven't seen yet, and then we're going to go with content management. So the new things about content part development we're going to look into now is related to loading data into our content parts properties, and the way to do it is using a lazy field. So let's see what they do. For this we need to open, sorry, not the handler yet, so spoiler alert. We're going to open the personalist part.cs file, and what we're going to do here is adding a new property to our content to our personalist part object, and it's going to be a lazy field. So what is a lazy field? Basically, it's a generic object, and it means that if you load some data into your content parts properties from an outer source, so not, for example, from your record, but from somewhere else, from a service, for example, you can load it lazily. So you can load these properties contents only when you need it, and the way to do it is to make a little modification to the content part handler. But the reason is, if you don't want to access these values, you don't need to load it, and basically you're saving computing power. If you don't want to access some data, you don't need to load it at all. So that's what we are going to do. This is why it's called a lazy field, because it only starts working when it's really needed, but not beforehand. Okay, so first thing is we're going to create an internal field, which is also a read-only field, and this is where the lazy field comes in. So as you can see, we're going to store the person objects in our content part and load them lazily. So what we're going to do here is load the enumerable of person record objects and put it into a lazy field. So person record is already used, and if you hit Control dot on lazy field, you're going to see that it's one of the orchard namespaces. And let's call it persons, and just instantiate it as a new lazy field. Okay, so this is the private, or actually it's an internal field that is going to work in the background. Now we're going to make a public version of it, basically, to be able to access this data from the outside, and this is going to be almost the same. So this is also a lazy field of enumerable of person records, and let's call it persons field. And basically it's just a property, but since setting this data, so loading the data into this property will be managed by the content part handler itself, we don't need to give a setter method to this property, only a getter, because we only need to access it. So basically just read it, and just type return persons. Okay, and this is the property, and then we're just going to continue. So now we have the lazy field declared. Now we're going to just create another property, which is not the lazy field. We sometimes need to access it, but now we are going to have a property on its own that is going to be the actual list of these person record objects. So this is going to be just the enumerable of person records, and let's call it persons, and it's going to return the value of this lazy field, which is going to be of the same type, an enumerable of person records. So just persons dot value. So just like in the case of the field itself, the property also doesn't need a setter value, because getting and so basically fetching the data into this field and then into the property is going to be handled by the content part handler. So the next thing to do is modifying the mentioned content part driver. So we have the lazy field now, we have the property to access and read the data. Now we're going to need some logic in order to be able to read any data out of it. So we need to load the data into this lazy field and then the property. And the way to do it is go to the content part handler. And as you can see, we have so far some logic that is necessary for storing the data into the database, so storing the records. Now we're going to extend it a little. And the way to do it is that we're going to hook into an event of the content part, which is called unactivated. So basically, just like in any programming framework, but like for example any Windows Forms application or something like that, we have some sort of event handlers, and there's actually a lot of them for content parts. One of them is unactivated, which means that it will be triggered when the content part is well, being interacted with. And as you can see, it unactivated. So we're going to call the unactivated, and now we're going to declare which content part are we working with, and this is a person list part. And now we're going to use a lambda expression. Of course, all of this logic has some sort of context, and there are some data inside it, and also the content part itself. So we can access the content part and well, do any crazy stuff with it. And the only thing we need to do here, and if I close it, it's going to work. Okay. So the only thing we need to do here is get the person objects somehow, and we're going to see that now. Get the person object somehow and put all of them into the lazy field. So the way to do it is, of course, we already implemented the iPersonManager interface, which is a person manager class. So this is how we handle the record classes. Now we're going to use it because this is the service that gives us all the data we need. And the way to do it is very similar to what we did with the lazy field. We're going to inject this as a dependency, but in a different way, as we have seen before. So in the person list part handler, we're going to use the so-called work, okay, IntelliSense. Okay, so in the orchard.environment workspace, there is a generic class called work. So this is very similar to the lazy field, but this is for injecting dependencies. If you use the work and then give it a dependency, this dependency will only be resolved when you want to use it. So the reference won't be stored. It won't be given to the, for example, person list part handler unless you call any method from this service. So this is also a nice way to save basically computing power, because if we wouldn't use this service at all, why would we want to store a reference of it? So now we're going to use the work with the iPersonManager, and hopefully it will recognize it. Okay, and the name of it is just person manager work. So now we have another dependency injected of the type iPersonManager, but this dependency will only be resolved if we call some method on it. So if I were to just run the code like this and do nothing with the person manager work object, the dependency wouldn't be resolved because I didn't use it. Now if I use it in the unactivated, for example, because I want to retrieve the records from the table, this dependency will be resolved and I will be able to use the service. So as you can see, as one of the input parameters, we can access the content part in this unactivated method. And what we need to do here is access the person's field. And there's a method called loader. So basically, just like it was a property, because it's basically a property, it has a loader and a setter, and of course I can access the value. So the loader and the setter are methods because they allow me to do something inside of a lambda expression when loading and setting happens. So in the loader, we're going to load the data very surprisingly. And the way to do it is just we pass lambda without parameters and use the person manager work dependency. And the person manager work has a value. So when it gets resolved, I'm going to get the dependency itself, and I will be able to use I will be able to call the methods on the actual implementation of the person manager class. We only have one now. And the method I need is of course get person. So I'm going to get these persons, and I'm just going to define the properties that I need to access. So So this way we don't need to pass here any properties. So this way the person manager, using the person manager dependency, we're going to load all the records, all the actual person record objects into our lazy field. So this way, when we need it, we're going to be able to use the dependency, the person manager, and when we need it, this will be loaded into the lazy field, and we're going to access it through a property. Okay, so far we have working content part, we have some actual data in the database. Now we're going to do some actual work with it. Now we're going to be able to lazily load the data that we need, and we're going to look into content management on how to handle these content part objects and the content types and things like that. So we're going to look into content part content manager actually. So next thing we're going to do is create a new controller, because we're going to add completely new logic to our module, and this controller will handle content parts and other content. So we are going to name it contents admin controller. And also this is an admin controller because the logic we're going to implement here is accessed from the admin dashboard. And we're going to see why it matters in just a second. Okay, so we have our controller here, and of course, for it to be an actual MVC controller, this needs to be derived from the controller class. And if we go to our module.txt, we already have a feature called Dojo Course.module.contents, and since this controller is related to the content management part of our module, we're going to add the orchard feature attribute to it as well. So we just say orchard feature and then the name of the feature. So this way, just like the person list part, this controller will also be related to the contents feature of our module. Okay. So the next thing here is we're going to add another attribute to this controller. So as we have seen before, there are very simple attributes, for example, orchard feature and the themed attribute. that gives some boost to our logic and gives some special properties to it. Another one is called the admin. So if we add the admin attribute to a controller, this will mean that this controller's methods will only be available from the admin interface in Orchard. So this is a very simple way to separate the functionalities of the admin dashboard and the user front end. So that's how you do it. Okay. So first of all, we're going to inject a few dependencies we're going to use later on in this controller, and as we have seen before, one of the most common ones are the Orchard service. We're going to look into the authorizer and of course the content manager. So if let's just declare a few properties. One of them is iOrchard services, and of course to follow the conventions and the way it's done in Orchard, these fields are private and read-only, and the naming convention is also to be followed here. So let's just declare a few of them. The other one is iAuthorizer. We're going to use it, not surprisingly, to make use of Orchard authorization features to be able to determine that a specific user is allowed to do something or something else, and that's how we do it in Orchard. And this is going to be the authorizer property. And then, as this controller is very strongly related to content management, actually we're going to inject another dependency, and this is the content manager. So, of course, the interface is called iContent Manager. Okay, and of course we need a controller too. And you may notice that if we start actually declaring in our constructor what kind of dependencies we need, we only need to inject here iOrchard services. Sorry, no underscore here. So Orchard services, and just to make it a lot easier, Orchard services contains references to all the other very important services. So now we're going to use it to actually save these references, and authorizer is actually inside the Orchard services. So as you can see, it has authorizer, content management, notifier, transaction manager, and work context, as we have seen before. We can inject them separately too. Now we're going to use the Orchard services, and then we have the content manager. And now Orchard services content manager. So now we have some very basic services injected into our controller. So let's use them. So the next step is to be able to access this person list. So we have so far some person record objects. We have a person list content part, which is basically to display a list of persons. Now we are going to implement some administrative features to be able to handle these lists. So the first thing we'll do here is create a method which will display eventually a shape. So this needs to be, and typing is a problem again. So this needs to be an action result, and this is going to be person list dashboard. So what we're going to do here is get a person list object and then display the list of persons inside this object. We're going to give it an ID as an input, and this is going to be the ID of this person list. And of course, if we don't pass any argument into it, this ID is going to be with the default value 0. So first of all, we're going to check if the current user is even authorized to do any of is authorized to use any of these functionalities, and this is what the authorizer will help us to do. So first of all, we're going to create a separate method just to use in our controller to determine and then give back a Boolean value to determine that the current user who is interacting with our controller is authorized to do that. So we're going to declare a private method, and as I said, it's going to return a true or a false, and let's call it is authorized. And it doesn't need any parameters to be passed into. All it will do is call the authorizer service, and actually it's very easy to use. We have the authorizer service injected to our controller, and as you can see, the only non-basic methods here are the authorized. So we're going to use this authorized method, and as you can see, this will require us a permission object to be passed. So if you, so we're going to create permission first. So this permission needs to be passed into this method, and then Orchard will determine whether the user is allowed or not allowed to do it. If not allowed, we're going to display a notification that, hey, you are not allowed to interact. And the way to do it is we're going to create our permission first. So the way to do it is we're just going to add the class to the project root, and this is going to be called only permissions.cs. And as I said, Orchard has a specific interface for us to declare our permissions for our features, and this is called iPermission provider. And if you look at the interface, you're going to see that this is just a normal I dependency as most of the Orchard services, and we're going to see the methods that we're going to need to implement. And of course, yeah, we can implement this interface and then use this using. Okay, so since this permission class is also related to our contents feature, we're going to add the Orchard feature attribute to it as well, and this is called Dojo Course.module.content, so if I'm not mistaken, yeah, Dojo Course.module.content. So, and of course we're going to include the using. So, first of all, we're going to declare some properties first. One of them is basically just a new permission that we're going to declare in order to tell Orchard what kind of permission it is. We're going to give it a name and a description, so it will be displayed correctly in the admin interface. And this is going to be just a public property. This is going to be static and read-only as well. So this doesn't need to have we don't need to take into consideration any special features of our web environment, for example, not making it static. This is just going to be an information for Orchard what this permission does. So this is of course a permission object, and we're going to use it. We're going to declare first of all the editor permission for a person list. We're going to have two of them. One of them to access the person list dashboard, so basically just to retrieve the person list, and then we're going to use a permission later on to determine whether the editing of this person list is possible for the user or not. So the edit person list is going to be just a new permission, and as you can see, we can define some of the properties beforehand. One of them is description. So this is the text which is going to appear if you edit a user role, and this is just going to be, for example, edit person list items. And then another one which needs to be of course given is the actual name of the permission, and well, it's very convenient that actually it's the same name as the property, just to make it consistent. So this property is going to be edit person list. So now we have one of the permission objects. We're going to create another permission object, and we're going to see how to make a connection between them. And the way to do it is, of course, we're creating a property that is very similar, and this is going to be the access person list dashboard permission. Of course, this is a new permission, and this also needs a description to be able to correctly display it, and this is the access person list dashboard. The other property is name, so it's going to be just the same as a property. And now another interesting thing here is implied by. So if we look at now, there's no any information here. So basically, what you need to know about it is that implied by means that if you give it a list of permissions, it's going to mean that if a person has that one of those permissions you declared in a list here, the user will also possess this permission as well. So in implied by, we're going to say and give it an anonym array. We're going to give it only one permission because we have only one other permission in our module, and this is going to be the edit person list. And by saying this, if for example an administrator user if an administrator user goes into the admin UI and edits a role, and for example gives the moderator role a permission to edit person list, this permission will mean that those persons that are in the moderator role will also be able to access the person list dashboard, because it is implied by the access person list dashboard permission is implied by the edit person list. So this way you can build a hierarchy of permissions so that they are sort of based upon each other. So to continue developing our feature, as you can see, the iPermission provider requires to have a feature property, and this is just going to be virtual with getter and setter, so nothing special here. We don't need any special logic here. Now in the get permissions method, we're going to return all the permissions that we want to register in Orchard, and not to throw a not implemented exception, we're just going to return them in an array. And very simply, we're just going to create a list of the permissions that we've declared before. So it's possible that you declare a permission here, but you don't want to use it immediately. This is the actual method that tells Orchard that, hey, these are the permissions I want to use, and for it to work, you need to list them. So, and the other permission is access personal list dashboard. So this is what get permission is about. And now the get default stereotypes, this method is basically tells Orchard that my permissions I just implemented, well, what user roles should be able to possess these permissions by default when the feature is enabled. So the permissions will be available in the system, but we can sort of give some default values what kind of user roles should be able to access or use these permissions. And as you can see, it also requires us a list of objects. We're going to return a list of objects where we declare for the built-in user roles what permissions should they possess. Now we're going to return another array, and as you can see, it's an enumerable. The return value should be an enumerable of permission stereotype. So one of the objects we are going to return, actually all of the objects are of the type permission stereotype. So stereotype. So we're going to return some permission stereotype objects, and they have, as you can see, two properties. One of them is name, the other one is permission. So the name property tells which user role should be the role that we want to give the permissions to, and the permissions is just a list of the permissions we want to enable. So name will be, for example, administrator, yeah. And the other one is permissions, and just like before, we're going to give it a list of objects, and this is going to be edit person list. And that's it for the administrator role. And as you can see, administrators will be able to access the person list dashboard, and this is because this permission is implied by this one. So if I give the administrators the edit person list permission, they will also be in possession of the access person list dashboard permission. And the other one is that we want to enable editor users, so users in the role of the editor be able to see what kind of person lists are in the system. So this is just a new permission stereotype, just like the other one, but this time the name property should be editor, and then the permission I want to enable for the editor users is the access person list dashboard. And if everything goes well, this is all for my permission class. So in my controller, I'm now able to define. I'm now able to detect if a user is not allowed or allowed to do something related to our person lists. Okay, so now we're going back to the contents admin controller. And as you can see, we have, if I would build the project now, I would have some errors. So now I'm going to just uncomment the isAuthorized method. And for the isAuthorized method, we're going to make use of these permissions we've created before. So if I use these permissions, which is static, so I can access it from here. You can see that the two permissions I have implemented before are accessible here. So now the isAuthorized is going to tell me if the current user is allowed to access the person list dashboard. And Orchard in the background will check the user. So we'll check basically the current user, and we'll check what kind of user roles is that specific user is in, and then it's just going to check if this permission allows or not allows to access the person list dashboard. And the other property we're going to give it is not the second, but the third signature of this method. As you can see, it accepts a localized string, and this message will display if the user is not authorized to access the person's dashboard. So that's just a T string of sorry, you are not allowed to do that, or something like that. It's actually quite indifferent, and that's it. And yeah, I forgot to inject this. I forgot to inject the localizer object into our controller. So the way to do it, of course, is just use this shortcut. So basically, this is a localizer. No, and it should be T, and using the orchard.localization namespace. And oh yeah, sure. The T, of course, should be should have some value, of course. So the new localizer.instance, we're going to pass an actual reference to our object, which will do the localization. So now back to the personalized dashboard. Personalized dashboard method. So somewhere up in the call stack we started where we wanted to display the person list. So the personalized dashboard method should start with the authorization, because first of all we need to check if the user is allowed to see it or not, and if it doesn't, if the user isn't allowed to see it, well, we shouldn't do anything else. The message will be displayed that he's not allowed to do it. So let's use the authorizer. As you can see, we have already implemented the isAuthorized method here, and it will just return a true or false value. And if the value is false, so the user is not authorized, we're going to return HTTP unauthorized result. So this will just redirect to a page and then display the notification. We're going to go on with implementing our personalized dashboard action first, and it's going to call some other stuff. It's just a wrapper around the functionality of getting the data and displaying it. So first of all, we're going to need another method we're going to use in our controller, or we're just going to put this implementation into a different method to be able to reuse it in our controller if we need it. This is going to be another private method. This will return us a content item, which is interesting and already known notion. And actually this tells us that now we're actually working with content items on a full scale. And let's call this method getItem. We're going to pass it an ID, and this method is going to use the content manager to get the actual content item with the specified ID. Now, if we're going to check, this is because the structure of the current structure of our code, we're going to check if the ID provided is 0. And in that case, it means that this content item doesn't exist yet, so we're just going to create it. So here's just a 0 check for the ID. If it is 0, we're going to use the content manager service, and on this the new method. And if you look at the signature, actually this new method only requires a string. And very easily we can determine what should be the actual value. It should be the name of a content type. So we're just going to pass person list. So if the ID we provide here is 0, we're going to instantiate a new content item of the type person list, but it still only lives in the memory, so it's not saved in the database yet. We're just going to create a new content item, place it in the memory. We'll be able to fiddle with it, and and we're returning it to our personal list dashboard method later on. Otherwise, if the ID is not 0, we're going to use the content manager also, and very easy to use the get method. And as you can see, it requires an integer, and this is the ID of the actual content item we want to retrieve from the content manager. So let's just pass the ID here, and that's all we need to do here with this get item method. Let's go on with the personal list dashboard. Okay, now so we have an ID, an incoming value of ID. If it's not provided, it's going to be 0. We're going to use this get item method to get a content item which already exists in the system, or get a new instance of a person list content type. So we're just going to save this reference that is given us by the get item method and just pass the ID, and our method will handle it to give us a content item. But it is possible that the reference we are given is a new reference, because if we give the content manager that get an ID and there's no content item in the system with this ID, it's going to be a new reference. So we need to make a null check to determine if we have a content item from the content manager or not. And very easily, we're just going to make a null check on this item object, and if it is a new reference, we're just going to return an HTTP not found result. So this is going to display the 404. Did I? Okay, that wasn't the intention. Did I? Okay. New keyword. So HTTP not found result. Yeah, it was strange because we used the necessary namespace before. So if there's no content item in the system with this ID, we're just going to display a 404. Okay. Now we're going to go on with another method. And this method is going to display us a shape. So we have talked about shapes before. Actually, the shape we are going to return is going to be generated also using Orchard services. But all we have done before here is acquiring an already existing content item or creating a new one is necessary, because we need a content item in order to display an editor or a display shape. So that's what we are going to do now. We're going to call a method called person list dashboard shape result, and it doesn't exist yet, so we're going to just create a method for it. And as you can see, this is a private method in our controller. So let's implement it. Okay. So the action result return value is not the most suitable one we have here. We're going to use the shape result here, because we're going to display an editor shape for the content item that is passed into this method. So the shape result is the actual return value we need here. But I think we have seen before, this is of the view result and the view result base, and somewhere, yeah, and actually on a 4 generation level, it actually is an action result. So of course there's no errors here. It's completely acceptable for the framework. So let's implement it. So the first thing we are going to do here is we're going to generate a shape, an editor shape for this content item, because that's what we want to display here in order to be able to edit these items and then display it somehow. So first of all, we need to generate it, and the way to do it is very easily. It's also using the content manager service. So we're going to store a reference called item editor shape, and we're going to use the content manager, as I said, and the method we need is called build editor. And very easily, as you can see, it requires an item of the type iContent. Content item is also an iContent, so it's all working for us now, but it's not a coincidence. So basically, build editor requires us a content item, and then we can get its editor shape. But then we have this object somewhere in the memory, but we need to do something with it. So what we're going to do here, not that. What we're going to do here is that we already have our editor shape in this content items editor shape in the memory. Now we're going to create an actual shape that will be match some template in our module. So what we have here is some dynamic object, which will be the model for our template, which then will be displayed, and will make it possible for users to edit these person list objects. And the Orchard services service has a method called new, and this allows us to dynamically create shapes. So we're just going to create an ad hoc shape, and it accepts a special property. It has a special property called editor shape. So we're creating another dynamic object. We're going to create a shape. It has to be given a specific name, and then this specific name will be matched by Orchard to an actual physical template in our system. And this item editor shape declared here and filled with another dynamic object will be the model for our editor, and it will allow us it allows us to build all of the structure dynamically, because that's one of the way to dynamically build them, not from a driver, but just dynamically build an items editor shape, for example here on the admin interface. So we have this model. We are now going to create a shape, and it will be matched by Orchard with an actual template, and the naming convention is very important here. So for example, let's call this reference editor shape, and we're going to use the Orchard services, and then we have this new, and as you can see, it just says nothing more, but this is a shape factory, and this is all completely dynamic. There's no IntelliSense here because it would require some static typing, but as I mentioned, it's all dynamic, so we can create all of the shapes in an ad hoc manner. That's why there's no statically typed objects here, only dynamic stuff. And the next method we are going to chain on it is going to be the name of the template we need to use, and there's a special convention here. We're going to call it Dojo Course underscore person list dashboard, and I'll explain in a minute why it matters. Now another important notion here is that we're giving it a value. We're passing it a value called editor shape. This is going to be the actual object we declared here before, called the item editor shape. So this will be our dynamic model, and then this will be our shape that we dynamically generated, and we're passing it into it. Now back to why the naming convention is important here. So basically, there's a special error message in Orchard. If you, for example, create a controller action and then say return view, but there's no template corresponding to this controller action, you're going to see a very long list in this error message what kind of templates Orchard wanted to attach to this controller action. So this will tell you the basics of how Orchard is coupling the shapes and the actual physical templates together. The convention here is that this method, basically, we're calling, because this is all dynamic, is going to be the actual name of the templates we want to use. Now, in the name of the templates, all the dots and the slashes that correspond to the folder structure are replaced with this underscore. So we're going to create a template, which is going to be the template for this dynamic shape, and the naming convention requires us to follow. Well, I've declared this so I could change it, but the naming convention requires us to follow some sort of similar structure. The actual name of the template is going to be Dojo Course.personList dashboard. So when I'm calling this method, Orchard is going to look for an actual physical template that has a very similar name, of course following the conventions that the dots and slashes are replaced with underscores. Of course, it could be somewhere in a folder structure, so there would be other underscores in the name of this method here. But the main thing is that Orchard is going to do some magic in the background and find an actual template for this method, and then it is going to be able to build this shape. So what we're going to do here is we're creating inside the views folder view to create a template, and I'm not sure if we have. Okay, it's just going to be an HTML page first, and then we're going to edit it. So it should be Dojo Course person list dashboard. Okay, so first is just it has some content because it was an HTML template, but we don't need it, and it should be of the format CSHTML. Yes, I want to change the format. We're going to put some content into this shape. Hopefully, if it opens, yes. Okay, so basically, what's going to happen here is that we have some sort of call stack. First of all, let's return shape result. Sorry, so this will build properly. So we have these references. But since the build error says we are not returning anything, we should return a new shape result, which also comes from the action result, as I said before. So this new shape result accepts two parameters. One of them is the controller that it comes from. It's of course this actual controller stored in this reference. And the shape, the dynamic shape we are going to display is the editor shape we have created before. So with this, our controller will properly build. So now back to our template. We're not going to do anything fancy here. Of course, the displaying and the editor and the display could be enhanced with some CSS and scripts, for example. All we are going to do here is a very, very, very basic structure in order to display something. So it's not going to look nice, but it's going to work. Now we're going to look into some other parts of other parts of Orchard, of the Orchard API, which is related to displaying shapes, creating templates, and enhancing them. Now we're going to see how we can add and register script files and style sheets into our module. and I think this may have been introduced, this feature, in team development. No, not yet. Okay, so this is new for now. So for the Dojo Course module, we're going to add a new class to the project root, and this will be, of course, an implementation of an interface that requires us to register static resources and then use them in our templates. So basically, it will mean that we're going to create some magical things in Orchard that have a unique identifier. They correspond to style sheets or scripts, and then we are going to be able to use them in any of our templates. So let's do that now. How we do that is adding a new class to the project root, and this is called resource manifest.cs. Okay, so we have our class here, which is completely empty. Of course, as everything in Orchard, it connects to some sort of API, and not surprisingly, this will be related to some iDependency. And of course, what we need to do here, as with almost everything in Orchard, we're going to implement an interface which somewhere derives from iDependency. And the interface we're going to use here is the iResource manifest provider. And this lives in the orchard.ui.resources namespace. And as you can see, it gives us, IntelliSense helps us by telling that we should implement some method here. And actually there's only one that we need to implement. It's very, very easy to use. It's called the build manifest. So basically this is the method where we tell Orchard what kind of resources you would like to use in our system. We are given an object in order to help us do that. So first of all, we have this builder object of the type resource manifest builder. As you can see, it has an add method. We are going to use it. This is the object through we are going to actually register our resources. We're going to store a reference of the object that the add method returns to us. So we're going to just store it as manifest, and builder.add. So we're storing a reference. It returns as you can see, it returns a resource manifest object. And on the resource manifest object, we are going to call some methods, and this is going to be the usual Fluent interface. So we're going to first of all declare the names of the resources, and then chain some methods on it in order to customize the behavior of these resources. So first we're going to call manifest, and as you can see, there are not much methods here. There are some properties we can access. One of them is, for example, base path. So base path is used if you store your static resources not in the conventional scripts and styles folder. You can customize it, for example, add another slash something to the end of this string. So Orchard will know where to look for your static resources. We're not going to use that now, it's not very common. Basically, every time you have some resources, you just put it in the scripts or styles folder. And the two most important methods we need to make note here is define style. So I'm just going to structure my code a little better. So the define style, as you can see, it accepts a string. This is going to be the name of the resource we're declaring here, and then this is the name we're going to refer to in our templates when we want to use this resource. So first of all, we're going to create a new style. So through define style, we're going to declare a style static resource, and the name should be Dojo Course dot, for example,
module.dependency. And a very important thing to note here is that our static resources in the system, for example the styles and the scripts, are actually rendered as shapes. So it is very important that you choose your static resources names to make them unique, because as we have seen before at team development, when you create a template with the same name as some other template with the same name, it is possible that you're going to override it. So in a very similar way, since the static resources are rendered as shapes, if you give two shapes the same name, or two resources the same name, so if there are two resources in the system on completely different places with the same name, it is possible that one of the other will override it. Of course, it depends if the feature is enabled and etc. There are other things to take into consideration, but it's just a warning that be aware that it's possible that you declare a resource but it's not displayed, or basically it's displayed but with a legal change or something else is displayed. So this is a possible way that could mess up your code. So watch out for the conventions and make sure you choose a unique name for your resources. Okay, so let's go on with this style resource. So going on with this float interface, we're going to call another method on the define style, which is very crucial to use, and this is the set URL. So basically, set URL, as you can see, it accepts one string. This is going to be the actual name of the file that we're going to use here as a style resource. So by default, I'm just going to call, for example, Dojo Course module dependency.css. So what will happen here is that Orchard is going to look for this specific file in the styles folder. If it finds it, the resource will be created, the style resource will be created, and then I'm going to be able to refer to this resource with this name. Now, another convention here, this is not an actual Orchard convention, but a web development best practice, is that when you're creating script and style sheet files, you follow this sort of naming conventions. So much like as with the name of the resource, you may want to choose a unique name, because it's possible that someone else is developing some sort of similar feature and uses similar name for his resources. It's nice to know that if you have similar features which actually do something else, the names of the files and the resources and etc. Can be distinguished. So this is just a naming convention to prefix your resources, your files with the name of your module and your feature. And of course, it's just the naming convention tells us that it should be all lowercase, but it's not that crucial. It's just a nice convention to follow, because this way your modules and file structure will be consistent. So so far we have our CSS file, but as I mentioned before, it's possible that you don't put all your resources to the specific folder Orchard, or actually, well, as the MVC paradigm follows with these conventions. So it's possible that you don't want to put this specific file into the styles folder, but somewhere underneath this folder structure. The base path will be taken into consideration when using this. So if you have a deeper folder structure and this specific file is somewhere deeper in the folder structure, you can use this base path property, and then it will be added to the route of this file before, of course, in the name of the file. So this way you can create a folder structure. Of course, be aware we have declared some resources here, but if you look at style, at the styles folder, we have nothing there yet. We're going to create those files in just a moment. First, we'll finish declaring these resources. So actually, the reason I call this a dependency, because just like with features, we can declare dependencies between resources, and this is just a demonstration of how to do it. This actual style sheet will do nothing important, but we're going to declare another style sheet resource. So we're going to just call the define style, and then Dojo Course dot module dot other will be the name of the resource. We're going to call the set URL method, because of course we need to tell Orchard what is the specific file we're going to use here. This is going to be Dojo Course dash module dash other.css. And now here comes another interesting thing here. We're going to chain another method here, and this is called dependencies. So set dependencies is the method that allows us to tell Orchard that when I want to use this specific resource, which is a style sheet in this case, we always want to include this other dependency here. The name is of course just to tell that it's a dependency. So we're going to need this other resource as well, because they are dependent on each other. Just like the permissions can be implied by each other, the features can depend on each other, and things like that. So the set dependencies method accepts an array of strings. Well, we only have one here, but you could pass it more than one dependencies. We're going to just pass the name of this resource here. So this way, we told Orchard that when we want to use this style, we're going to need this one as well. So very, very easy so far. If you look at the available methods that you can call here, there are some other methods that can be used. Some of them are very self-explanatory. Due to the lack of time, we were almost at the end of this lesson. I'm not going to explain them all. You can tell Orchard that you don't want to use a specific style sheet or script in your module, but you can call another. You can call to a resource from an external source, from a content delivery network. You can basically make difference of normal versions of a style sheet or a script and its minified versions. So basically, if you just display something, you can use a minified version of a script, but for debugging you obviously want to use the normal version, because it's impossible to debug in a minified version. So that's what these methods are for. You can call the URL and URL debug, and of course you can store different versions of the same script. For example, you are using AngularJS. You can put multiple versions of the same script into one module and distinguish them with different version numbers, because one of the features has changed in a newer version, but you want to use an older one, and so it's very flexible and very easy to use. And now, lastly, in the resource manifest, we're going to create a script just to use this as well. So if you call the define script method and give it a name, dojocourse.module.filtered, we're going to use it later. We're going to set this a URL, and let's call it Dojo Course module filtered, and then we're going to set a dependency here. Set dependencies here. So the only dependency we're going to use here is jQuery. So where does the jQuery come from? How did I know that there's a resource called jQuery? Well, it's very easy. If you go to the modules, you're going to see that there's a module called orchard.jQuery. If you look into the scripts folder, you're going to see that there's a lot of files here. So at first look, it's just a mess, but jQuery has a lot of modules. If you look at the resource manifest, of the jQuery module, you're going to see that there's a bunch of resources here. One of them is just called jQuery. So that's how you can explore what kind of resources there are in the system. It also has a version number declared, and as you can see, this file, the jQuery minified version of this version number, is present in the system in this module, but it also has the CDN URL declared, also for debugging. So there's a minified and a normal version here. So in order to make it work correctly, because now we just did something that connects two modules or features together. But of course, as we have learned before, if you use something for another module, on one hand, you may need to store a project reference if you're calling, for example, interfaces classes. But if you're just using, for example, a script resource like this, you need to tell Orchard that the jQuery module is needed for working, in order to make my model work. And of course, since I refer this dependency, the jQuery, I'm going to add a dependency to my module as well. So I just visit jQuery and add the jQuery module to the module.txt. As you can see, the contents feature has some dependencies before, because it's going to use for example, the widgets feature. But now our resource manifest file is part of the main feature of our module. So in the module.txt, I'm going to tell Orchard that the Orchard dependencies. I'm going to tell Orchard that the Orchard.jQuery jQuery module is a dependency for my module, because I'm using a script resource from that module. And if I'm right, yeah, it's small j. Okay, so we have our resource manifest. We have some resources declared, but we don't have any files yet for them to refer to. So I think we can end the lesson here, and next time we're going to create these files. They're going to have some very, very basic content. As I said, we're not going to do much customization to our templates. We're going to add some content to these files, and then we're going to see how to use these resources we have declared before in our templates. So that's it for today and for this week. See you next week.